Hello everyone, my name is Link and I'll be going over my Cold Reap Raider build guide in this video. And basically it's a physical conversion to cold self-cast to Reap build. And it's a very expensive build. The budget is, I think I've put over like 200 exalts into this character. So don't expect to play this character unless you have a lot of money. And it should definitely not be a starter character because it requires quite a number of things to make it work. So what is Reap? Reap is basically this Scythe-looking spell that you just slash enemies with whenever you use it. Right now we're self-casting it, and normally it does physical damage over time per second. But it turns out that with the recent buff to this on-hit portion, the on-hit does a lot of damage. Basically, Reap lets you, whenever you hit them, whenever you hit an enemy, you gain a blood charge. And you can get up to, I think, 6 on this build when you have the helmet chat. It's either 5 or 6. But basically, you do like 25% more damage per hit. Or sorry, 15% more damage per hit. What makes this build look cool? So we're going to add this support gem called Awakened Spell Cascade, and what it does is it adds basically 4 reaps. You can see how there's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And with Awakened Spell Cascade, you can see in this middle zone, it'll create these overlapping reaps, and effectively this creates a shotgun effect. And this reap is now doing 4 times the damage. And we combine it with Awakened Spell Echo, and now we are getting 8 reaps per cast because 4 and 4, and then now we're doing 8 times the on-hit damage. So, without further ado, I'm going to run a quick map to show you what the clear speed is like and kind of how it plays out. Um, yeah, so this is a hardcore build, so note that a lot of the playstyle behind it and the reasoning behind my item choices and why I went for certain things was to make sure that my defenses were very, very solid. And this build is one of the tankiest builds that you'll probably ever play. It's also one of the highest damage dealing builds that you will probably ever play too. So it's a I wouldn't even say it's a good balance of both. It's like one of the most OP builds I've ever played. Period. It's really zoomy. The clear speed is pretty good, and yeah, the damage is top notch. One thing I want to say is that throughout this map clear, I am constantly pressing Hatred with the new Divine Blessing. With the new Divine Blessing support, and that gives us the extra R effect while we map. Okay, pretty quick. Gonna go find Minotaur. Pop our focus. And he's dead. Cool. Made pretty quick work of him. And yeah, I'm on standard because some unfortunate things happened, and here we are. Okay, so this character is at level 98 right now, currently. I wanted to go over quickly the defenses of this build, just like standing and hideout. So we have 23k armor, around 40k evasion rating. We have 89% all max res. We have 99% spell damage suppression, which we can get up to 100. We have around almost capped attack block and spell block. We can also cap it off with a bit more work. We have full ailment avoidance. Well, actually, I don't want to say full ailment, but we have the majority of the ailment avoidance. So we can still get sapped, brittled, and scorched, but you don't see that very often. So it'll only be a big deal if we are if we're doing simulacrums and stuff. We have 50% crit reduction because of our chest, and then we have a good amount of movement speed with some action speed. So overall, pretty good, pretty solid. You can see that this is way above average of what you would expect from like a softcore build. So why should you play this? If you like self-casting, if you want something fun, if you like, how the skill looks, which I totally love. It's like probably one of the most fun skills I've played, and that's why when I died, unfortunately, it was like one of the most heartbreaking moments because I was having so much fun with this build. Um, so yeah, how does this build work? So this build, as I said earlier, is a physical conversion to cold build. And what are the items that make it work? So the items that make it work is first this scepter. So we get 26% physical damage converted to cold here, alongside our gloves, which gives us 34% here. So that's gonna give us 60%, yeah. So and then we get our remaining 40% from here, from the Cold Mastery. So normally, Fizz conversion builds usually require some sort of Hatred Watcher's Eye, but because of the way that we created our gear in this build, we were able to not have to run a hatred conversion Watcher's Eye, and now we were able to run just like a pure like double damage hatred Watcher's Eye. And that's kind of like the reason why I wanted to start with this or make a build with this, because of the scepter. And you can see the scepter is like a total like beast. It's one of the best items I've crafted, and honestly, it's like one of the easiest items. I don't want to say it's one of the easiest items, but it's a very straightforward item that I was able to craft. Other uniques that we've been using in this build are Aegis Aurora, which allows us to raise our max cold res, alongside Melding of the Flesh, this new jewel that came out in this recent patch. I've been using it within my other builds, and basically what it does is it gives me let's see, a bunch of cold, like it's gonna give my max fire res and max lightning res plus 13 to them. So you can see they went from 76 to 89 from just equipping this jewel. Other uniques that we're using are Ashes of the Stars, which is one of the best amulets in the game right now. Simply because it gives us a ton of reservation, it gives us a lot of skill gem levels, and then quality is huge as well. And then what other uniques we're using? So on hardcore, I managed to get a pair of the Forbidden Flame and Flesh jewels, and in this case, this was Veteran Boyer of the Pathfinder class. And it basically gave us 15% fizz damage as an extra random element with Ellie Pen. Turns out that this isn't really the best in slot for this build, but I had a pair and I was like, okay, I have all these items that are coming together. What can I make with it? And then it happened that I wanted to play Reap, and it worked. Reap worked out. So I have my Watcher's Eye here, and then we use Intuitive Leap to grab some of our passives here. Okay. Let's see, what else do we need? I think that's pretty much the main core items that are required. So it's the Fizz conversion, and then melding coupled with Aegis Aurora allows us to hit really high defense capabilities. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. So for the Scepter, we have a pretty much high damage dealing Scepter. We have a +2 spell damage, and then we have the Fizz conversion, and then we have the crit multi with cast speed. Gloves, we have life, spell suppression, with the unveiled Fizz converted to cold. On our implicits, using the Eldritch mods, we have some cold damage leech, and then unnerve to gain 10% more damage. On our belt, we have life, res, gain a flash charge when you deal a crit strike, and that lets us have good uptime on our flash during boss fights, which we don't really need because this build kills most bosses in like less than 5 seconds. It's around like 25 million damage with my focus up and my pots running, so it makes quick work of most bosses. Our boots are going to be pretty straightforward as well, which is just life, res, movement speed, and then spell suppression. Our Eldritch mods that we put on here was Tailwind. I think the best in slot you can probably get is the Tailwind Elusive boots with Onslaught, but it was annoying to fit in res, so for now I was just using these. For my ring, this is probably one of the best items I've crafted. It is a shaped Redeemer Vermilion ring, and it has Frostbite. And also it has the Shaper mod on the prefix, which life gain for each enemy hit by your spells. So while one thing to note is that Reap costs life. You can see on my life slowly draining, and this build doesn't have like the greatest recovery rate, and it doesn't have the greatest regen. So on hit, you're able to gain a lot of that life back. And also it has T1 cast speed, which is really important because this is a self-cast build. My other ring basically has T1 life and T1 cast speed with res and some flat damage. Yep. I think ideally this would also be a shaped ring with the Shaper mod life gain on hit. But yeah. Shield is going to be Aegis Aurora, like I said, to give us max cold res and then ES on block. Amulet is going to be Ashes of the Stars because we are running quite a bit of auras and we want to be able to fit that in with the mana reservation. Our helmet is going to be a pretty straightforward life res helmet, and then it just has damage on the implicits, whatever you can fit, and then +1 socket AoE gems for that extra AoE, and yeah, and then +1 maximum blood charges because we want 15% more damage. Our chest is going to be quite of a it's a Awakened Orb chest, so we're not going to be using the new Eldritch mods. And the reason why I opted for this route is because you can guarantee and pretty much make this chest really easily as long as you have money. It's really straightforward, and the way you make it is you awaken an orb, the non-curse aura effect with spell crit chance for the suffixes, um, and then afterwards on the prefix you lock suffixes and then reforge caster using harvest, and that'll give you the additional curse. And then whatever prefix you get and whatever suffix you get, you kind of live with, and then you craft the life as max ES at the end. And then I was chucking like 4 or 5, like I think I chucked like 5 or 6 of these into double corrupt, and then this was the best outcome. But ideally, you want a +2 like AOE or duration chest. And yeah, I managed to hit reduced extra damage from crits, so as well as 5% phys damage reduction while stationary, which are both really good mods because I'm standing still and just, going at bosses. For my flasks, it's going to be Bottle of Faith, Taste of Hate, Diamond Flask for crit because it's a crit build, and then Quicksilver with cast speed. And then we don't need any of the ailment immunity suffixes, like freeze, shock, immune, because we are ailment immune. One thing you can opt for is to get like a granite or a jade instead of the bottle of faith if you want more defenses, because we are investing into armor and evasion in this build. And then our life flask for corrupted blood immunity and bleeding. So let's talk about the gems. So the gems for the main skill is going to be Reap. And then because we're a crit build, we're going to have increased critical damage support. We're going to use Spell Cascade and Spell Echo because of the interaction that I explained earlier. We have Cold Pen for some extra penetration. And then we have Empower 4 to boost up the gem levels. On our Scepter, we have Frost Shield. And Frost Shield basically creates this giant circle, which increases our crit chance so long as we're in it. It's a little bit of a funky playstyle to play, but it's really good versus bosses because we can prep it beforehand and then just like spam within it. And yeah, we use Assassin's Mark as our second curse, and that's the reason why we have you can apply an additional curse. Assassin's Mark is our source of power charge against bosses and frenzy charge as well. And we gain frenzy charges through the Mark Mastery over here. 10% chance to gain a frenzy charge when you hit your marked enemy. And then we use life tap support because we have mana problems. And you can see Assassin's Mark here costs 72 life, so we can just spam it with no issue here. On our gloves, we're going to have Hatred, Divine Blessing, Increased Duration, and Life Tap Support. And this is a new combination that was introduced in 3.17. And what this allows us to do is when we press Hatred, you can see I am now able to run an extra aura without having to reserve it. So it's kind of very similar to the old March of the Legion mechanic, where you're just casting it every couple of like 30 seconds, and then you get a free aura. So it's pretty cool. On our helm, we're going to have Determination for armor, Enlighten to run our gems, Grace for evasion, and Purity of Ice to get that extra max cold res up. Shield, we're going to have VMS, Arcane Surge, and Flame Dash. Flame Dash for our teleport skill, and Molten Shell on left click so that we automate and gain some extra defenses. And now we have Molten Shell whenever we have Vol Molten Shell whenever we need it for sticky situations. We have Tempest Shield to give us immunity to shock, as well as give us a bunch of block chance. We have Herald of Purity to give us more damage, another Enlighten, and then finally Defiance Banner to scale the effects of Grace and Determination. So, yep, those are the gems. So let's talk about the passive tree, and let's start with the Ascendancy. So this is a Raider, like I said before, and what we opted for Raider because of these jewels that I had. You can honestly play this build on like Inquisitor or Ascendant. Like Waggle's doing a version of the Chieftain Raider Ascendant. That's really good. So there's different ways that you can play this. I'm sure that Inquisitor with like massive regen can run this as well because you're gonna have a ton of damage from being able to run RF and naturally having Consecrated Ground. In this case, we're gonna run Raider because we get 40% chance to suppress spell damage, perma phasing, and then we have perma onslaught through rapid assault, and then we scale that onslaught effect, gain a bunch of evasion, and then we have a lot of exposure from Avatar of the Veil. Our tree is kind of like all over the place. It looks a little bit weird because we're going from Raider all the way up to the Inquisitor area. But basically we picked up as many life nodes as we can while being able to traverse the glancing blows. And I like wasn't sure if I wanted to go block in this build, and you probably don't have to, but because I was using Aegis Aurora, it just kind of made sense to. And that's why I opted for this route. So on the right side, we're gonna get Intuitive Leap, so we can get +1 max cold res. That helps us scale up to 89. Heartseeker, we get the Fizz conversion over here, the Mark Mastery, more max res here. Go to Scion, grab life nodes. Iron Will for some extra damage. Relentless for some damage. This slot over here for Unnatural Instinct gives us like all the perfect stats that we need, which is AoE, skill effect duration, regen, fizz damage, cast speed, spell damage, all of that good stuff. We have block nodes over here, life, more life and damage, and then sovereignty, reservation, life, and more damage. One thing like I was thinking about doing was, at least for softcore people, you can probably drop the shield and go just run 2 scepters, and you'll have like, easily over like 50 million damage on this build. Pantheons, I'm running Soul of the Brine King because we're not stun immune. It's probably one of the biggest weaknesses of this build. That is, we aren't stun immune, and that we don't have really good recovery rate. So you can see, if I press Hatred here, you can see how it's not the greatest. It's not the fastest of how quickly my life regens, but that's why what I do is whenever I press Hatred, I just press Health Pot right away. One thing you could do for your miner is run Tukohama, so that while you're standing still, you get an extra 2% life regen. Yeah, and then the minor Pantheon, you can just kind of swap whatever based on whatever content you're doing. So yeah, this build is like, it's probably one of the most fun builds I've had. The luxury to play, again, it's like one of the most expensive builds, and you can kind of see from my gear that from the gear that I have. I'll cover the crafting in another video, so because I don't want to make this video too long, so you guys can watch out for that. And yeah, I guess further improvements for this build. Basically, this build was almost all the way capped out. The biggest things that I was missing and I was working towards was the +2 gem level chests, the double corruption. You can see here on my suffix, I have some dead suffixes here and dead prefixes. So like I can get more life on my gloves and I can get res on my suffixes. Same with my boots. Like I have a T5 defenses mod there and a T4 res mod. And then um, and then my ring here could have been a shaper ring. So just kind of like small upgrades, that small minor upgrades that would have been big, but it adds up a lot because it allows you to do more things, especially when you're min-maxing towards the end. Um, the one thing I was trying to buy on hardcore was focal point from the Deadeye Mastery. Basically, it increases the effects of your marks, and I was gonna replace that over Forbidden Flesh for the Forbidden Flesh and Flame Jewels. And what that would allow me to do is gain 75% increased effect of Assassin's Mark. And then another thing I wanted to do was I wanted to run an Elegant Hubris over here that had like R effect, and like Frenzy Charge and hit, and then like Power Charge and hit. And what that would have allowed me to do was run Anomalous Assassin's Mark. And what that does is for the alternate quality bonuses, it increases the effects of the mark itself. So I can show you that on here really quick. Oh, where's my stash? And you can see cursed enemies take 4% increased damage, and then when you scale that with enhance and ashes, as well as focal point, you're gonna be getting a ton of damage, like an insane amount of damage, and then enhance too on the Assassin's Mark. So yeah, those are pretty much my last upgrades, and if you guys have any questions, just feel free to comment below, and I'll try to get around to answer them. And I'll attach a POB in the YouTube description. So cool. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any feedback about this guide, any questions, just let me know, and have a good day. And if you play this build, it's really fun. Highly recommend it. Go do it. Bye bye.